And yes, we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient radio on the web at Facebook.com/Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and our new infant baby steps worldwide global broadcasting format, coalitionradio.org, where you can listen to last week's shows and some shows from the vault over the 3-year track record of the Coalition Talk Radio, pissing off everybody in Rhode Island politics. Dave, what's that?
And some groovy music.
Yeah. Cool tunes. Dave, the big number this week, 75-0. And no, that is not the box score of the most recent Yankees-Red Sox game. 75-0. Who knew that we would have a We Are the World moment here where people would come together in unanimity across the corrupted plains of Western Cranston, South Providence, the Bucket, Wooney, and say, yes, the bloated, insane budget that runs this little pustule of a state was somehow just right for the people. Who knew?
I was thinking about this whole 75-0 vote, and we talk a lot about how basically the Republican caucus in the House has been completely MIA this entire session.
Moribund, as they say.
What are there, like 12 Republicans? Like 12 and one independent? Wouldn't you, so the budget is going to pass, right?
Right.
Because there's 65 other people that are going to say yay. Wouldn't you just out of the fact, taking your role as the loyal opposition, wouldn't you just vote no? Because, it's going to pass whether you like it or not.
Just out of what they would say in 19th century England, out of sheer pique, perhaps.
Right.
Just to prove a point, as it were, that you actually are an opposition party and that you are relevant somewhat in the real world of what they call Rhode Island politics, if in fact those two words can be used in the same sentence. Particularly in the last year since David Fisher joined the show, we have really focused on a wide range of social issues that we have proven, beyond a shadow of a doubt, even in a Rhode Island courtroom, that not only mean a lot to folks in terms of the individual quality of their lives, their family, and the economic future of the state, but also at the same time, whether it be the war on drugs, whether it be the folks who are joining us today in studio, across the range of social issues mean real dollars and cents to the state. And yet somehow, across all of them, the only one, and I got to congratulate, I guess, is it Representative Keeble for this? Somehow, we passed a law that will allow people to grow industrial hemp with one little caveat. You got to
get licensed.
Yeah, right? You got to get licensed. And, all right, let's just say, let's put this out to the studio. How much do you think that license costs? Would you pay $5 for that license? No. By the way, my hero.
I didn't see the specifics of this. What's the dollar?
I'm going to challenge my inner ShamWow guy. Okay, would you pay $25 for this license?
That seems a little low.
$25,000 for the license.
For the $25,000 for the privilege of growing industrial hemp
for 3 years, of course.
Is this through DEM? This is a license through DEM?
We're not sure yet, but this is for a limited time and a limited time only. Self-addressed stamped envelope, please, included. No CODs allowed.
What farmer in Rhode Island? I don't care if you're Confreda Farm, the largest farm in Rhode Island, acreage-wise. These guys who are barely surviving in South County on selling turf. Maybe they'd like to grow some hemp, but do you think they're going to want to front up $25,000 to do that?
Or as they would say in Woonsocket, $25,000.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, there you go. So in one moment of just, I don't know where it came from, where they decided that, yes, we will pass this. But that's the kicker. Now, I don't believe the governor has yet to sign this into law. I'm torn. I guess I hope she signs it just to prove that, the walls of society will not cave in, that well, actually, with just about every progressive social move made in this state in the last few years, that somehow this state will survive the growth of industrial hemp in this state. But I took great humor in that. Highlight moments were, of course, that at one moment in time that the state was going to take, I guess, a few shekels out of the flinty cloth-lined pants of Twin River and actually use that money and dedicate it towards lean manufacturing. But nope. Can't have that, can we? That was actually by our friend Patricia Morgan, I believe, proposed that. Even her Republican constituency voted that down in favor of making sure that we continue to assuage the significant ego of Hair Mattiello. Any other attempts to, I don't know, introduce any level of common sense? We saw another one of our pet causes, which is the tourism bureaus shredded. We saw this hideous tax placed on vacation properties. That's gone through. I guess the nihilist in me actually.
That rental tax was devised and executed, I swear to God, in like a week.
Right. And
I never saw anything move so quickly through the State House than that stupid rental tax.
Yeah, and execute would be, of course, probably the operative word here, in the fullest sense of the word, because what they've done is essentially execute. Between that and the pillage of the South County Tourist Bureau, they have executed, in a sense, dozens and dozens of family businesses that have been in place in Rhode Island for generations, all to feed their ego and feed the beast, feed the cancer that is the government of the state of Rhode Island. Oh boy. So, the nihilist in me, though, actually in a twisted way is embracing this. As you know, as a devotee of Ayn Rand,
some people just want to watch it all burn.
I just, and this is kind of a plot giveaway to anyone who's not read the book. But let's just say, and certain of my friends will get this instantly. I want to be on that plane.
That stupid book. Again.
I want to be on that plane flying over Providence when the lights start to blink out. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Because at this point, given the imminent opening of our friends at Plainridge, by the way, which is, even though I've never been there, I'll never go there, I'll tell you right up front, with all the sincerity that a talk show host can muster, that it's a much better place to go to. They don't allow smoking. The odds are much better in your favor than Slum River. And I would encourage everyone who's wasting money at Twin River, your life will actually markedly improve if, in fact, you take that money and go up to Plainridge. That's opening up next week. The cities and towns, by the way, amongst all this joyful noise that's emanating from the finalization, if you will, of the pension accord, little thought is given to the fact that, remember, by the way, that was the agreement that our gubernator couldn't live without, couldn't be changed a bit until it became a source of her political expediency. But that's going to cost cities and towns an unanticipated millions of dollars in their budget. And by the way, we have yet to know whether or not the stadium and these truck tolls will actually come into place. So, folks, another week in Little Rhodey, or if I could channel my inner Carol Burnett, as the stomach turns.
They've been playing the reruns of Carol Burnett on one of those like secondary digital TV stations. It's on like midnight during the week.
I mean, the only ones I can afford on my cable.
Right, 10.2 or whatever that is. But I happened to catch a bit of that as the stomach turns thing, and it's just absolutely hysterically funny. Harvey Korman and Carol Burnett. I mean, you never saw. I mean, they talk about chewing up the scenery. They are just shy of literally chomping down on the set and chewing up the scenery. It's really, really hammy and funny.
Well, not unlike an entertaining evening at Halitosis Hall. Talk about scenery chewers, or to quote, on a multiple level of ironies, shall we say, I try to get out, and they pull me back in.
They keep pulling me back in.
Well, we've kind of juggled the lineup a little bit today. Dave, why don't you introduce our first set of guests? Why don't you go ahead? And we're into the last moments of the legislature, so we're not going to give you the plot spoiler until the very end. But we've often discussed in the show that libertarians, Greens, progressives, in a sense, live in a very circular world in that ultimately we have a lot of the same goals, dreams, desires. We believe in a lot of the same issues, and no issue personifies the unification of the libertarian movement and the Green Party movement than this. So take it away, Dave.
Okay, in the studio with us today, we have Liz Guardia. It is Guardia, right? Okay. Michael Liberatore, and my very good friend Alex Kithis from the group Right to Know RI, which is a group that is fighting to, plainly put, have genetically modified organisms and foods containing them labeled as such by our state legislature. So, guys, welcome to the coalition.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question? Part of my job as the setup guy here is to try and ask a question which will just completely knock our esteemed guests here for a loop and infuriate them, right? So, as someone who's
I hope not.
someone in his early 50s, as I am, who grew up watching nature shows because that was before we had 300 channels.
Marlin Perkin.
Exactly. We always were treated to the notion that, you'd have the corporate music playing in the background from Monsanto or fill in the blanks. Or back in the day, for me, it was Archer Daniels Midland, which, by the way, was the sole sponsor. The first time, actually, there was a direct sponsor of United States Senator Bob Dole. So Archer Daniels Midland would have these specials on public television, ironically, where they would talk about folks who were starving somewhere in the country and how the chemists at Monsanto / PerkinElmer / who knows,
Better living through chemicals.
Exactly. Would structure these Frankensteinian plants which could somehow survive nuclear war, cockroaches, and a bad evening at our Rhode Island legislature, and yet somehow feed the world. And not to worry, that was right after the special where they would introduce into an area where they had a mosquito problem, some type of carnivorous insect, and that wouldn't have any issues whatsoever. So I grew up in a world that literally you'd have the men in the gleaming, it was always men, by the way, gleaming lab coats, sparing us from a future of dystopia and post-apocalyptic nightmares, which actually we've ended up anywhere. So what's wrong with better living through chemistry?
Well, the basic premise of why we want these things labeled is because there is when you kind of think about genetic engineering, a lot what people used to think was one gene controlled one characteristic, and that is very untrue, and that's what's been found in recent years. And so when plants' DNA is modified, it can introduce novel compounds and unintended allergens and other chemicals that maybe weren't expected by the scientists doing it. And there's not a whole lot of safety testing on these things before they're introduced into the public. So there's enough of an uncertainty and enough of a possibility of risk that we think it's a worthy thing that should be labeled so people can make that assessment themselves.
To me, it just comes down to, this is a right of choice. You choose what to put in your body or not to put in your body, but if you don't have the proper information in front of you to make that decision, you could say, I don't want to eat genetically modified foods, but unless those foods are labeled as such, you don't have the tools in your box to actually make that decision and move forward with that effectively. So to me, this just comes down to a choice matter.
Definitely. Dave, I'd just like to jump in for a second. There's just 2 points, and I'm not a scientist. I'm a business guy, and I'm into health and fitness. I have a business in the health and fitness industry. And there's just 2 things that concern me the most, to simplify things. First is, why don't they want us to know? Right? We're in a capitalist world. We need to have freedom of information to make decisions and let the consumer choose where they want to spend their money. If they're going to keep this information from us, there's a reason. And what's the reason? That's number 1. Number 2, these things have been banned in Europe, right? Right?
To the point where European ports will not accept any cargo container that has genetically modified crops or organisms or foods on them. They will not even let it into their port.
Right, and you've got certain American meats that are banned across Asia as well.
Sure. Yeah.
By the way, just as I can throw in a post-mortem before you guys jump in again, amongst other places, the Everglades, Chesapeake Bay, Boston Harbor, and are filled with all sorts of invasive species as a result of the 1960s Marlin Perkins era, where we would just introduce willy-nilly all sorts of other species in, and then, this will take care of this, no problem. So, but anyway, continue, please.
To your point, Dave, today I think I was reading Germany had banned or is in the process of banning any GMO seed coming into the port because they're concerned at the alarming amount of bees that have died, and they're attributing it to the GMO, so they don't want any crossbreeding happening. And that's concerning. We're losing our bees here as well. So it's not just affecting transparency that we should have the right to know, but it's also affecting our environment. and we need to be proactive. I mean, we can't just always have this, it works right now, it's not broke, don't fix it. We need to be looking ahead.